What's going on, FA Nation? John Impemba here with James Grande, bringing you the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS live stream here on Friday. James, you did the main on the playbook today.
What's going on, FA Nation?
John Impemba here with James Grande, bringing you the Fantasy Alarm. Some big names ruled out, some big names ruled in. A lot of value, particularly with the Miami Heat tonight. How was putting the playbook together?
Putting the playbook together was not too difficult. I found a lot of value, as you mentioned, and I think it's not going to be a big secret who is tonight's value. It's going to be a high-scoring night because the value is going to be chalky, especially at the point guard position. It was a really fun slate. I thought it was one of my favorite slates early on today, and it really didn't change throughout the day. There are a ton of great plays at every price tier, except really at the elite tier, where we have like James Harden, and then it just drops down to the mid-tier. So I'm excited to break down this slate in the live stream, and I was excited doing the playbook, and I'm excited to win a lot of money, and excited for FA Nation to win a lot of money tonight as well.
Yeah, we're very confident, I think to say, on today's kind of lineups and where we're going. You wrote up about 45,000 players in your playbook. You did the analysis for 28, and then you listed the other half of the player pool up at the top. We'll kick it off at the point guard spot where we have Trae Young, $9,700 on FanDuel, great price, $10,200 on DraftKings, still a good price, high enough where I don't think we're going to have a lot of ownership on him. He gets the Celtics in Boston. We just saw this matchup the other day. He had a strong outing. Trae Young, of course, has exploded at times this season. Is he a player that you're going to sort of feature in your lineups tonight, or how much Trae Young exposure do you have?
He's not featured, but if there was ever a time to get Trae Young at low ownership, it's tonight, because people are going to be scared off by Marcus Smart. People are going to be scared off by the spread. People are going to be scared off that it's in Boston. People are going to play James Harden, and then they're going to play. I could rattle off 10 guys and in the 8K range that they're going to build in fair and balanced lineups. So the projections for Trae Young's ownership kind of seem correct. And, if you're being contrarian, you're building a whole bunch of lineups. I think you would be remiss not to have Trae Young in a couple, just because, I mentioned the playbook, 3 of his last 8 have gone for 70. So that's obviously beneficial to any lineup you're in, 70 fantasy points. So I think Trae Young, very contrarian tonight, not a priority for me, but contrarian nonetheless.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's a good opportunity if you're making, a bunch of lineups to get him in 1 or 2, because he is capable of being the highest scoring player of the slate, and you're going to get him at fairly low ownership, because like you said, there are definitely other spend-up spots. We're looking at sort of the next tier. You really only have one player listed in that next tier, and it's Ben Simmons. We have a lot of projected ownership for him tonight because his price tag is just $8,000 over on DraftKings. Obviously, FanDuel 8,800. They're back home where Philadelphia plays a lot better up against Memphis, which is a pace-up spot for them. Why is Simmons sort of your mid-tier point guard option tonight?
I mean, it's pretty much the 2 things you just mentioned. Price point first, 8K for a guy with triple and double upside at any time is first and foremost why I like that 8K price tag. And then second off, again, this is a huge pace-up spot. Memphis 6th in pace, Philly 18th. So a lot of extra possessions here. I don't love the top-tier point guard. I'm actually surprised to see Simmons garner this much ownership, considering I mentioned there's a lot of guys in this 8K range. I would suspect it's lower with Kristaps Porzingis being active. I think a lot of people in that forward spot will pivot to him. I also have up top Damian Lillard written up. Obviously contrarian, but he did score 51 actual the first of this month against Utah, and possibly no Whiteside. Obviously,
and they're home too. Right? Or
no, they're in Utah.
Oh, they're home.
Which is scary. Okay. It's definitely scary. Playing Lillard on the road, because we really do like using him at home. But I mean, again, no Whiteside. That could bring triple-double Lillard into play, because they don't really have any big men. And then Lowry, 62 fantasy points in this same matchup we just saw the other night. 58 against them in 2 meetings. So it's not like was bad the first time. He went over 50 fantasy points that one too. So that would be my only other two upper echelon plays. I love the mid-tier, like upper mid-tier or lower mid-tier, upper value tier at point guard tonight, John. I have all the exposure to the Heat guys in Dragic, Kendrick Nunn. I have a lot of exposure to Mike Conley in tournaments, considering where he's been and considering the matchup against Portland is just so tasty. Yeah. Reggie Jackson is a usage monster without all these guys.
The track play that killed for everybody the other day.
He went for 45 fantasy points. They're literally without their four essentially top scorers. Obviously Drummond no longer on the team. Blake Griffin is out. Luke Kennard is out. Derrick Rose is out. Like they don't have many options. So Reggie Jackson, a really strong play. I think Jalen Brunson's still in play in tournaments.
Okay.
If he starts, I don't have as much exposure. I'm slightly less bullish on him considering Seth Curry is active, considering JJ Barea is active. Obviously, Barea might not even play, so that could potentially not even be a factor for us. The Curry news is a little worrisome because we've seen at times if Curry gets going, he's going to be the guy to play over Brunson. So I think Jackson, Dragic, Nunn, Conley, a pairing of those two, you could fit three of them in lineups on DraftKings because you get shooting guard eligibility on Kendrick Nunn. I think they're all super elite plays at this tier, and I think I have in a lot of lineups, I have two of them, to be honest. And almost, I would say like 75% of my lineups, I have two of those four guys in cash and tournaments.
What about some of the other guys you have written up top? You have Ricky Rubio. See somebody that you like?
I probably should have included Rubio in that as well because not many teams are worse against the point guard position. Seventh worst in terms of DVP for Houston. And, last time we saw them without Westbrook, they started Harden at point guard. Right. Now, will he guard Rubio? Probably, right? Because they're not going to put him on Devin Booker. That'd be a nightmare for them. So we could see Rubio take a few more shots here, and he's obviously an elite passer and has good scores next to him. So I do like Rubio quite a bit for tournaments. Look, one of these games, John, he's going to break out and give us 50. We've seen it a whole boatload of times this year.
He's got triple double upside, so.
Right. So, yes, I didn't mean to exclude Rubio. He is definitely within that 4, so now 5 mid-tier point guards.
All right. At shooting guard, your analysis for Harden was very direct. Don't you dare fade this man. Don't you dare. And, for good reason. I mean, we've looked at it before, without Westbrook, without Capella, who's obviously no longer there anymore. Harden has like a 50% usage rate. It's absolutely insane. His fantasy points per minute were up over 1.8. I know Robert Covington being there now, will certainly impact that like a little bit. Covington is a guy that definitely is more offensively gifted than maybe the other wing players that they've had in the past. Outside Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon, did give him his due, is a pretty good offensive player. But still, this is the Harden show tonight, and we should be expecting big things against Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, what more do we need to say when the guy's averaging nearly 2 fantasy points per minute without Westbrook and Capella on the floor? It is what it is. Like, you can be the ones to fade him. If you're building one lineup, you do not fade James Harden. If you're building 20 lineups or
still don't fade
50,
James Harden.
You don't fade him. You just play a couple, maybe hedge your bets in 1 or 2 or 3 where you don't play him. But your primary lineup and primary lineups should have James Harden included because, again, we're talking about a guy who legitimately could get us 100 fantasy points in a 234.5 total.
Do you want the actual number for Harden here?
Yes.
47.3% usage, 1.85 fantasy points per minute without Westbrook and Capella on the floor this year.
Don't you dare fade this man. Don't you dare.
Eric Gordon's at 31%, by the way, so that also not too shabby in his own right there. So pretty solid. If we're not going there, Bradley Beal, if you're looking at the playbook, don't be alarmed that he's in red. He's starting tonight. A little bit of a tech issue there. And again, we have low ownership on Brad Beal. Not surprising. Nobody ever plays Bradley Beal. We talk about this all the time. He's about a lock to go for 55. It seems like on any given night, anywhere between 50 to 60 fantasy points, he's going to go ahead and give you. They're very shorthanded. I know they're getting Napier to play today, but they still don't have, Jordan McGray, which McRae was shipped out. Beal's still an elite option. But you and I are even more bullish on the guy below him in your playbook, especially at the price. I think Devin Booker could just as easily match what Beal does tonight.
Yeah, and that's why I think Beal goes overlooked. And it's not because people aren't realizing what he's doing. It's just because like you said, Devin Booker could easily put up the same production at $2,000 less across the board. So it's really easy to go there. If you want to pivot off both of them in tournaments, play Beal. That's perfectly fine. He could score you 50 actual points. There's proof right in the last, just look at the last 6 games of Bradley Beal's season. So I think Devin Booker is pretty much a lock and load. He is one of my favorite plays of the slate. He's one of your favorite plays of the slate. Probably should be one of everyone's favorite plays of the slate. 234.5 total, pace up spot. They allow a ton of points to shooting guards, they being Houston, the 5th most in the league. I mean, it just everything lines up for Devin Booker to excel in this matchup. There's no reason to think he won't.
We did just get news. Victor Oladipo will play tonight. He'll sit out tomorrow's game. TJ Warren is ruled out. We are at shooting guard. I know that Oladipo didn't make your playbook, but thoughts on him and how that impacts your liking for Jeremy Lamb, who did make your playbook?
So Lamb isn't the best play without them, obviously. I mean, we saw in this same scenario the other day, it was actually Justin Holiday who broke out and scored 25 actual points, give us 40 fantasy points over Lamb. Lamb was more of both set because we know, like you mentioned, Warren is out, Oladipo's in. I don't necessarily have love for Oladipo. It's the same matchup that we liked him the other night. I just think
he only played 25 minutes in that game. He was supposed to play 28. I know 3 minutes doesn't make a huge difference all the time, but he put up 20.5 fantasy points there. He's $4,900 on DraftKings though. The price is quickly dropping on him. And on FanDuel, Oladipo price sitting at he is 51. So cheaper now on DraftKings and FanDuel. Does the 4,900 if he gets 28 minutes at all? I mean, 25 fantasy points is 5x, so you're just kind of Xing him out completely.
For tournaments, sure. No, I'm not going to tell you to not play him in tournaments. I think that's a very appealing play. On FanDuel, the thing is, Marcus Smart is only $200 more expensive, and he draws Atlanta with a shorthanded Boston team. So I would rather go there on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, perfectly fine with going Oladipo in tournaments. Nobody's gonna play him because Toronto's a good defensive team.
Yep. Talk about my guy Dennis Schroeder continues to be under $7,000, even though he's got 4 straight games of 40+ fantasy points. And then you mentioned Marcus Smart gets Atlanta there. Does it make sense to pay up here at shooting guard to this mid tier where you do have some of the value that you mentioned, whether it be a Duncan Robinson or other guys at shooting guard?
I mean, I think if you want to get leverage in terms of ownership, no one's going to play Dennis Schroeder. It's another guy who nobody plays. And if you're going to get 48 potential fantasy points out of him at 69 and 6,800 respectively on the 2 sites, why wouldn't we play him? I mean, are we going to get 48 fantasy points out of Duncan Robinson? No. I mean, I like Duncan Robinson. I've been very adamant about the Heat all day in the playbook. I've been adamant in chat. People who have messaged me. I love Miami tonight. I can't pass up an opportunity in tournaments not to get a 50 burger out of Dennis Schroeder. I think that's at 5% ownership. That's how you win tournaments. If you're max entering, I think you want to get exposure there. I think Donovan Mitchell's another guy who you could get exposure to in a really great matchup against Portland. He scored 35 actual against them earlier in the year.
Does it matter that Conley's back and playing well?
Slightly, but the price on Mitchell is under $7,000, and I think that's appealing to me. And it's not Mitchell is. If Mitchell gets going, he's going to shoot, and it doesn't really matter if Conley's playing next to him or not. If he gets going, he's going to. Anyone can score against Portland. How bad their defense has been. It's been a bottom 5 defense in the league for a month now. So I do agree, though. There are some really good values in Smart, Robinson. I think McLemore,
Bruce
Brown, who's definitely going to start again, and good rebounding guard. And now without Drummond, obviously, Drummond light and Christian Wood is likely going to start in the rotation, but I could see like 6 or 7 rebounds out of Bruce Brown, and it really wouldn't surprise me at all. So I think Bruce Brown, Duncan Robinson, and even Ben McLemore, who I expect to start, we just saw this 2 nights ago or 2 games ago where, yes, there wasn't Robert Covington, but there was no Russell Westbrook, and they just moved hard into point guard, and they slid Ben McLemore into the starting rotation. If that's the case, why is he only 2%? Like, what is the?
I think Robert Covington is definitely kind of an X factor there, though. Again, I feel like he becomes more of the third option. I think he would eclipse McLemore when they're on the court. I think Gordon would still be the number 2. I could be wrong, but I just feel, just given sort of how we consider Covington as a player, and the fact that they just acquired him, like I feel like he would be that third guy.
And it's a good point, but if, let's say, one starts and the other, let's say McLemore starts and Covington doesn't, we're going to get extended first unit run without him on the floor, and that could be, beneficial for McLemore on 2 shifts, because if he doesn't start, he doesn't start the second half either, so we get 2 full shifts of McLemore. Just a thought. It's a tournament play.
Those situations are always scary to me, not knowing how the rotation plays. Like, it could be a spot where McLemore starts and Covington plays 35 minutes and McLemore plays 22. It's one of these things where I always try to say, like, take the wait and see approach. I don't think Covington's going to see any less minutes than he played, so I think Covington's still
no
safe.
chance.
It's just, what's going to happen with the rest of those guys there. So somebody I feel like has to suffer at least a little bit. If we go down into your small forwards, Pascal Siakam, of course, the power forward center on DraftKings. But the other day, I think you, at least me, but I think you were on the same train. The Pacers are a terrible team against defending the front court. Both Siakam and Ibaka went to town against them. I have no problem going back to them. And then you're only getting him at $7,500 on DraftKings. That's like one of my favorite plays the whole day on a slate that has a billion great plays.
Yeah, it's very hard to ignore that, right? A guy who's gone for 40 plus a whole bunch of times, and he just put a 50 in the same matchup as you mentioned. And why he's 7.5K, it's kind of weird. And that's why we're seeing 18% ownership projection on a 8-game slate. So, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with Siakam in all formats. I think he's a great play, especially on DK. I can't even say especially on DK because the position is so thin, small forward on FanDuel, that he's a great play there too because the position sucks. He's the only player over 7K active at small forward on FanDuel on this slate. Only one.
That's crazy because on FanDuel especially, we always know it's kind of a sieve position as it is.
8 games though, John.
I know. That's what they get for doubling up, Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward at both that small forward, limiting all the positions there. You have Tobias Harris there. I skipped over Oubre, but I really just want to ask you about Harris first because I think Oubre obviously a great spot. What is it about Harris that you like here? Because he's somebody that I've largely avoided now for a little bit, knowing that Embiid's back and everybody.
I like him a little less because Josh Richardson is active. I think that scares me off. But, it's a price point is super low, $6,200. I don't think it's like this elite tournament play. I think it's a safe cash game play. It's a nice pace-up spot. He put up 41 fantasy points just last night in a nice pace-up spot against Milwaukee. And I think is essentially the same situation here against Minnesota or Memphis, a bad defensive team, pace-up spot, really cheap price tag. It's really a price point play. It's a scarce position play, and it's not like I'm not like all in on Tobias in tournaments, but you especially when you consider FanDuel, it's essentially like night and day. I have all my Tobias Harris shares on FanDuel. I have 0 Tobias Harris shares on DraftKings because I can play anybody at small forward on DraftKings. I cannot play anybody on FanDuel. It's really a FanDuel play, and I think even like the ownership is kind of indicative of that 17% on FanDuel compared to 10% on DraftKings.
So since doing the podcast last night with Sean Mitchell, we saw all of the potential players ruled out of Miami. I've been in on Derrick Jones Jr., and then everybody ended up being officially ruled out, which makes me like Derrick Jones Jr. even more. Only $4,800 on DraftKings. Jones over on FanDuel, priced out at $5,200. We've seen him this year when Butler sat have monster nights in the past. As recently as the last game, he went for 48 fantasy points. We talked about all of the value. For me, Jones, especially as you mentioned, limited on FanDuel, he's a must play for me.
Yeah, I mean, 25 fantasy points or more in 3 straight. And it's something that we've talked about ad nauseum with him. Eric Spoelstra loves the guy and just plays him. And especially where they're thin, not only Butler, there's no Hero, there's no Myers Leonard, there's no crowd. I mean, they're literally missing 5 or 6 of their rotational members. So there's no reason he's not going to see.
He has to play.
He's not only not going to, like, he's their backup pretty much every position they have on the board tonight.
Yeah.
Small forward, power forward, he's going to play a ton of minutes. So yeah, it's just one of like literally 6 or 7 Heat guys that I would consider tonight. And I don't want to say I'd consider all of them in all formats, but it's pretty close, especially on FanDuel where the position sucks. I mean, like, you're not playing Hardaway in cash, right? You're playing him strictly in tournaments. I think Hardaway's fine for tournaments. So, leg up to Jones in cash games there. You're not playing Oubre in cash games.
Right.
Based on one good game, he's very inconsistent. You can play Eric Gordon, I think, in cash games.
Whoa, big news. Trae Young just ruled out.
Trae Young ruled out, even though he was probable all day. So that's concerning to me from the Boston perspective. That's where my mind immediately went, considering Jason Tatum is likely going to be one of the chalkiest plays of the slate. Yeah. How does Atlanta keep that game competitive? John Collins.
Yeah, I mean, and they're already limited too. So, I guess you have to go now. Jeff Teague becomes a value play that you have to go back to. Going to start at point guard for them. We know that DeAndre Hunter's active. He's going to see additional run, especially if they're running Collins at the center spot because Dedmon's not there at times. Kevin Huerter is somebody that we didn't talk about before, but maybe now worth talking because they only have so many players that they can really play also. So even though it may be a blowout, I feel like all those guys still have to play. But how much Tatum do you want now? How much I guess you can still play Cantor. All right, now it's been updated to doubtful. Figure it out. So Trae Young's either doubtful or not playing. By the end of this live stream, he's going to be ruled in. So we'll have to wait and see. I guess he's going through shoot around, but does that impact your Cantor? I guess we haven't got to send it yet, but Cantor was considered one of the highest owned plays of the slate, even though he only plays 25 minutes. How much does this Young factor really impact everything now?
I think it impacts Boston more than anything because you were playing Jason Tatum at a 8+ K price tag when there are elite plays around him. I think you might want to find that there's Bam Adebayo on FanDuel for cheaper. There's Porzingis is more expensive. I think it affects Boston more. I still think you can get away with Cantor because he's so cheap. I still think he can hit value. Plus, we're not playing Cantor for 30 minutes. He's going to play 20 to 25 regardless. So I still think we could play Cantor. Jeff Teague is fine. $3,800. He's averaging 1.11 fantasy points per minute without Young this year. Man, that really throws a wrench in a lot of plans because there was already a lot of elite point guards. Right. And now
I don't know if Teague becomes an elite point guard, but he becomes just another value play that is going to get
that price though, John. 38, obviously, 47 on DK is not a must play, but $3,800 on FanDuel is really, really appealing. That will let you get Harden plus Porzingis and Harden plus Porzingis and Booker. You can literally do a lot with Jeff Teague in your lines. Honestly, I still rank both Heat guards ahead of Teague. Yeah. I still rank Conley probably for tournaments. But Jeff Teague has to be in our player pool. Huerter has to be in our player pool.
Collins for sure, probably.
Collins definitely, yeah. I mean, I think you bring up a good point about DeAndre Hunter because there's no Cam Reddish either for this game. Cam Reddish is already ruled out, so I think DeAndre Hunter for tournaments is a really good play.
Hunter $4,300 on DraftKings,
and he's gonna play. And he's gonna play 35 minutes regardless.
4 straight games of over 24 fantasy points.
Yep.
And didn't play in that most recent Boston game the other day. So, coming back from an ankle injury that cost him 2 games. It's Atlanta's a mess. And on Slate, they already had a bunch of more value, just kind of opened up for you there. So sorry to sidetrack you. We were going over the small forward position. Hunter, I think, is a small forward on FanDuel. So
he is. I think I am willing to say $4,100. I think we can play him all formats at $4,100.
I would still probably touch some Justin Cat and GBPs because we have seen him play 35 minutes this year and put up like 3 fantasy points one game. So he can certainly stand in the corner and do absolutely nothing, but I feel like there's going to be an opportunity for him to at least score. So other small forwards that we didn't go over, Mikal Bridges. How do you rank him now, sort of given the Miami value, given the new Hunter news? Where does Bridges fit into your plan? Because it is Houston after all.
I think he works best in game stacks with Houston, Phoenix, because I put Hunter ahead of him. I put Derek Jones. I put Eric Gordon on the flip side. Probably game stacks only. I put Hardaway above him. So he's like a lower value tier play. But again, it's a position that we're most definitely going to be spending down on FanDuel. So I think we could take shots in tournaments on Bridges.
All right. We'll go to power forward where we had Jason Tatum. We had tremendous ownership. On a 9-game slate, we were having ownership upwards of 50% on him, which is rarely the case on those large type of slates. I think we'll certainly probably see some ownership shift down, but I mean, it's also worth noting that Boston's depleted. Like, they don't have Hayward, they don't have Jaylen Brown. There's Kemba Walker's on a 30-minute limit, but like, if this game starts to run away, are they gonna really push the 30 minutes on him? Like, Tatum could still be the guy in this game here, and for them really to put Atlanta away, like, wouldn't it still be Tatum being the primary player of that?
Yes, probably. But
Jalen Brunson is starting, by the way. Courtney Lee starting at shooting guard.
Rick Carlisle is smarter than all of us. So the line has moved from 232.5 to 228, John, and it is now a 13-point spread in favor of Boston. That is a 5-point swing, 4.5-point swing. That's scary to me. I'm not getting rid of all my Tatum shares. In a lot of them, I can pivot to Bam Adebayo. We can pivot down to Collins, who I think, irregardless, plays 35 minutes because we've seen it. We've seen him play 35 minutes in blowouts because, again, Atlanta's depleted, probably worse. They're without Fernando, Dedmon. They just
listed who they have active and available for them tonight. It is Teague, Horter, Hunter, Collins, Jones, Goodwin, Graham, Brown Jr., and Carter. Who
they literally have 2 big men.
I'm not even sure who the last 2 guys are.
Vince Carter.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about him. Thought he retired 10 years ago.
Well, that would make him 40 10 years ago. I love Tatum. I'm not going to waver off him in some lineups, but I'm definitely going to make pivots where I can in others. I'm not going to be as bullish as I was just because this game could legitimately be a blowout by. They suck with Trae Young. So what are they? How are they going to stay competitive without him?
They need Horter to really hit some shots.
They really need a miracle.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're 100% right there. All right, so that's Tatum and Collins. We already talked about how much we like Siakam. Bacon's a power forward on FanDuel. Is he a center only on DraftKings still?
Center only on DraftKings, yep.
All right. Either way, $62 and $6,300. I mean, again, we already talked about it. I'm surprised. I think maybe that the ownership is that low on DraftKings at 10% for this spot for him. Like, that seems very low. Because I understand there's just so many other options, but like, this is a great play for him.
It is a great play.
Is it just because he's limited to center, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I think there are like Cantor is going to be obviously the chalk at the position. We could play Christian Wood for $300, who's center eligible on DK, who everyone's going to pivot to after seeing the Dwayne Casey comments, after seeing what Christian Wood's done in times when Drummond's been off the floor. So, I mean, I think there's multiple reasons, but that just makes it a better tournament play. That just makes it more appealing for tournaments. If you want to get Serge Ibaka, could go for 50 at $6,300. I mean, the more the merrier. So, I think Ibaka's perfectly fine for. I actually think he's fine for all formats. If you really want to go there, you're probably not going to play him in all formats. Like Porzingis, that guy.
I was going to say, well, how come Porzingis only made the write-up but not the play?
Well, I just because at the time there was obviously a questionable tag. I mean, as you could see, like throughout the playbook, there's nobody that was questionable that made the playbook. It was all guys that were already ruled in, and then guys who were questionable or their pivots, if somebody sat out, made the top. Like I have Brandon Clark at this position who, is contingent upon Jonas Valanciunas. I have Porzingis who was potentially inactive, and I have Maxi Kleber there if Porzingis was hurt. So I did note that he is as elite as they come, considering it's Washington. Like
he's gone for like almost 50, minimum 50 fantasy points.
Minimum 50. Yeah. I mean, it's the only concern is like, how does he adjust with the mask? I imagine he's going to wear a mask. I don't know if there's been like an official word on him wearing one. I can't imagine he doesn't. He has a broken nose. So, but I think Porzingis is probably my favorite play at power forward overall. And then, when we go down the value tier, Covington is fine. I think Covington is a really nice tournament play for game stacks. And then Bertans, who nobody's going to play, playing a lot of minutes and went over 30 fantasy points last game. Super interesting. Also, do you think Grant Williams now becomes even more interesting if you play blowout factor, because he's so cheap and he's obviously going to get run in a blowout?
Yep. I mean, he was already playing anyways. Cantor wasn't going to get more than 25 minutes. They don't have Tice. He would be the garbage time power forward for that team anyway. So, Grant Williams is there. What do we have a cost? I have to assume he's under 4K, right?
He's under 4K. Yeah, he's under 4K.
3,800 on DraftKings, and Williams was on FanDuel. What'd you say? He is 4,100. So they bumped him up. But I mean, the last two games for him, you gotten 30 fantasy points over on FanDuel in 24 and 22 minutes. So now you're going to go ahead and give him and those 30 fantasy points came against Atlanta, 13, 6, 2, and 2 in 24 minutes. So, I think at the very least, he's not going to see any less minutes than he's been playing. So, you can definitely take that into consideration. Let's finish it off at the center spot. Joel Embiid at 8,500 on FanDuel, or DraftKings rather, it seems criminal. But I still don't know if he's my favorite center. I like Ayton a ton. I like Bam a lot against Sacramento. Everybody was on Cantor. I don't know if that totally switches or not, because he's only playing X amount of minutes anyways. Like, he could still get that run. And then Kelly Olynyk was the value play at center with the Heat. So, run me down in your center spot. I
mean, look, Embiid is not this bad. He's just not. He's not this bad. He's actually been great on back-to-backs. He's averaging 27 points and 53% field goal percentage, which is both highs. That's the high in any type of rest that he's had throughout the year. That's a 5-game sample, obviously not big, but something worth noting, because this is a guy who hasn't played back-to-backs throughout his career. Memphis also allowing the 8th most fantasy points to centers this year. And again, the price tag is just criminally low. It's a pace-up spot. We get Embiid extra possessions. I love him. Obviously, there are elite pivots, like you mentioned, like Bam. I mean, there's no Jimmy Butler. He's averaging nearly 1.3 fantasy points per minute without Butler this year. Plus, Sacramento playing at the 12th fastest place since the start of the new year. Miami 29th. So this is a huge pace-up spot for Miami. I think Bam is an elite play. DeAndre Ayton in a crazy game environment against 6'5" center and PJ Tucker. Obviously shouldn't have a problem there. And then Kanter is the chalk. I mean, I don't think we should waiver off Kanter in this spot because he's still going to play. We're not expecting Enes Kanter to ever play 30 minutes. It's not what he does. He gives us 25 minutes, and I think regardless of situation, he's going to play 20 to 25. And at that price, he's going to
start at center, and they don't really have a backup center, so they can really only play these guys so much as it is. So, I mean, I'm going to be intrigued sort of to see exactly who's in the starting lineup tonight, too. Like, if Grant Williams starts tonight next to Kanter, like, I think the minutes are secure. You know, they don't have Brown or Hayward. I know Smart's going to fill one of those roles, but whether it's Romeo Langford, whether it's Grant Williams, like, somebody's going to start tonight in that lineup for them. So, definitely worth watching.
And then you mentioned Olynyk as a pivot, and I also just want to throw Damon Jones' hat in the ring just because – first off, there's no one active for Atlanta. They have 3 centers inactive. Capella, Fernando, Dedmon, all not playing. And Jones has played 25-plus minutes in 3 or 4 games and has gone for 30 fantasy points in those 3 or 4 games. So, I mean, he's likely a guy that plays all the minutes regardless of scenario. I mean, obviously they could play John Collins at center, but that situation was more likely when Trae Young was active because they play Young and Teague and Horter next to each other. Now they don't have that option. Now it's Teague, Horter, so I think Jones is actually a really nice contrarian pivot off both Olynyk and Kanter, considering nobody's going to play the guy. Nobody's going to play him.
Right. No, I agree with you 100% on that one. I don't think anyone's going to be there either. James, 643. Obviously, we got a lot of roster construction to rebuild. I'm sure the lineups probably need a tinker or two. So why don't we get out of here? Sean Mitchell's been in subscriber chat and answer questions. Any final thoughts here?
Nothing too much. Just going to go back into the lab and update the lineups and get them out to you in the next 15 minutes.
All righty. Good luck, everybody. We'll talk to you later.